She started to date, she realized that she could have these other connections and these other relationships, and it didn't take away a single thing in terms of her love and commitment to her husband, that those things could coexist. And so
poly myth busting. A lot of people will know, I hope by this point, that Sex and the Solo Girl is a poly-friendly show. Actually, Breakups, Broken Hearts, and Moving On is as well. So maybe I'll put this on both of them. And today I'm speaking with someone who has a particular interest in the misnomers about ethical non-monogamy from an anthropological standpoint, especially. I actually got to meet Rebecca because my partner came across one of her articles in Scientific America where she talks about her study of the polyamorous community and some of the myths/misnomers about it. So welcome to the podcast network, Rebecca Lester.
thank you so much, Janice. I'm really excited to be here.
I am happy to have you. So happy to have you. Before we get started, what would you consider to be your job title? And what are you most proud of that you would like to direct my listeners to go and check out online?
Great, thank you. I have a kind of unusual job situation, and I have a couple different things that I do. My main job, my day job, is that I am a professor of anthropology at Washington University in St. Louis. I am also a licensed clinical social worker, and I have a private psychotherapy practice. So, and those two things go hand in hand as far as I'm concerned in terms of how people understand the world around them and their place within it. As far as what I'm most proud of, that's a little challenging, I guess. Like,
Okay. It just came out of my mouth that way. I don't know.
I guess, like, in terms of things that I've written, I think I'm most proud of my book, Famished: Eating Disorders and Failed Care in America.
Wonderful. Okay. Yeah, that's perfect. Is it on? Can I link to it on Amazon?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Everybody go and check that out. And what is the book about?
The book is based on field work that I did off and on for about 7 years in an American eating disorder treatment center. And it is a look at that center as a kind of microcosm of the American healthcare system and how the structures that govern how we pay for healthcare often make us a lot sicker. And so it's looking at eating disorders in that light of the kinds of ways that the treatment that we provide people not only isn't really working, but can make things worse for folks. And then suggestions about what do we do if that's the case? How do we change it?
So with your breadth of work is dynamic. So how, and it seems, studying the polyamorous community seems quite different from what you just described. So how did you get interested in studying us? And yes, for the record, I think everyone knows I'm non-monogamous. So what made you so curious about me?
Well, a lot of my work, including Famished, what I'm interested in is human relationships. I'm interested in intimacy. I'm interested in connection and empathy and how we show up for each other or don't, and what happens, as a result. So after I finished Famished, I was going through a divorce. And as many people do during that time, I got on the apps. So I'm on there dating, and I saw so many people coming up as polyamorous, non-monogamous, different ways that people describe.
Yes, a lot of open people who consider themselves to be in open relationships are on the apps.
Right, for sure. And that was different than the last time I was on the app. So I was like, wow, this is really fascinating. So I started to read a lot more about it and just got so interested in how people navigate that and experience that. And so I started talking to folks online on the apps. If somebody, said that they were polyamorous, non-monogamous, and we seemed to have things in common, I would, swipe right. And if we matched, I would tell them right away, like, I am an anthropologist. I'm not currently looking for a polyamorous situation, but I'd love
Okay.
to talk to you about your experiences if you're willing. And everybody was so excited to talk about it. And so that was the
Oh.
beginning. Yeah, people were great. And they're like, oh, I can introduce you to my partner and my other partner or my friends, and kind of went from there. And then it built over the years. I started going to national conferences around polyamory that had a lot of polyamorous folks there, obviously non monogamous folks, and going to meetups and social things. And it just kind of went from there. And it's just such a different world than what I think
Mhm.
people assume from the outside.
And I'm going to give a little shameless plug right now because you mentioned conferences. And we have the Mile High Love Fest coming up
Yeah.
here in August. And I will be appearing as the flirt doctor to
Oh, that's
help
amazing.
people learn how to become more confident flirting, approaching people, what some good tactics are, what some good tactics are not. So please, everybody, especially if you're in the Mile High City, Denver, come and check it out. I'll put more information also in the show notes. So yeah, I'm so excited about that.
That sounds
Um,
so amazing.
I'm really proud. I'm the first person that they've asked to do that type of role.
Wow.
So, mm.
That's cool.
And then also I would say, as far as the apps go, for some reason I don't always consider this, but after I got divorced, I also went on the apps pretty quickly. And the very first per- person slash people
Mhm.
I met up with in real life were a couple who were
Mhm.
looking, I mean, more or less for a unicorn, but
Mhm.
slash a third. But
Mhm.
yeah, that was my very first
Wow.
dating app experience after my divorce. It was the first time I'd gone on an app,
Mm.
and there was just something about their profile. We ended up actually all seeing each other for for a little bit.
Oh,
So
that's cool.
yeah, no, it was a great experience actually. What do you find the most interesting about the polyamorous community slash lifestyle?
I find the emotional intelligence the most interesting. People who do it, successfully, whatever that means for different people, but it really demands that people become self-aware of their own emotional history and makeup and how they communicate that, and to also be learn new sensitivities because you're dealing with multiple people at once, so you have to be really skillful and tuned in. And
Mhm.
I think that's just so fascinating.
You definitely need to at least get used to
Sure.
communicating
Yes. Yes.
on a daily basis. I will say I definitely have my strong moments and my weak
Oh yeah,
moments
of
when it
course.
comes to how well you do it or how well I do it. But it's definitely something that happens on the regular, and this
Yeah.
is something that I appreciate. Yeah, about the community as well, and it certainly taught me a lot about using my words.
Oh, yeah. Another thing about the community that I find particularly, intriguing and fascinating is, you know, it's really, and there's all sorts of different ways that people do non-monogamy and all of that. But in all of them, what I've encountered is people thinking about love differently than
Mhm.
the standard monogamy myth that we have been inculcated with in our society.
What would you say is the standard monogamy myth that you just referred to?
Right. So this is something that, we're all familiar with because it's everywhere and you cannot get away from it. But the idea that there is one true love out there for you, and you just have to find them and be open to it, and then you'll connect and it'll be amazing and you'll get married and be together happily ever
Gotcha.
after,
Okay. Mhm.
right? And that happens for some people, but a very small percentage does it go that
This
way.
is true. We also like to refer to it, especially on the show, as the relationship escalator.
Yes.
And that is what we're taught growing up, that things kind of build on each other once you find the one.
Yes.
And, transitioning out of a relationship, like ideally only happens when one of you dies.
Right. Right.
And yeah, that's something that I've kind of rejected for quite a while. So yes, thank you for bringing that up. We are here to talk about poly myths. So
Yes.
let's get into it. I have a number that I've written down based a little bit on your article, but also being in the community for a very long time and someone who posts about it a lot, it is crazy the ignorance that some people have around it. I mean, one of the first things we'll talk about is um, that it's justified cheating, which I just
Right.
can't even believe that we need to say on this show. It's not something I would normally even bring up. However, on like Poly Awareness Day last year or something, I posted on Facebook just Happy Poly Awareness Day, and I had two different people that said Happy Justified Cheating Day, and I was amazed and insulted. So let's just talk about that one.
Mhm.
Why is this so pervasive? Like, can you dispel this myth? What has been your experience in your research?
Sure. Yeah. I think part of the reason it's so pervasive is because the majority of people have a really difficult time understanding why someone might be okay with their partner being with someone else. Like that does not compute for most people. And that is, derives from the kind of old fashioned standard understanding of love and relationship where you kind of own each other. Like you're my husband or you're
Yeah.
my wife.
When someone talks to me about it, whenever they say I just couldn't share, it's
Yes.
like nails on a chalkboard. I just can't share. Like, oh, because you own the person. And I know that's a very innocent thing for someone to say who just has no concept of this and who can't wrap their head around it. But I still just find it so cringy when people say that.
Yes. And, I wish people, if they wanted to express that, would at least really say what it is, which is, I have too many insecurities. And,
Okay.
that's not an insult. We all have insecurities. I certainly do, and so that's what it really is thinking like, I can't conceive of how I could handle that, you know?
Mhm.
Um, and so that is a big thing. So when people think about it it's hard for them to think about it outside the parameters of cheating because you are with someone who is not your designated partner. So that's what people mostly go to. And of course, that is very far. Obviously, the opposite of what is happening in
Oh
a
yeah,
poly
if your partner knows about it, I don't really see how you could consider that cheating.
exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, and this brings us to another myth directly, which is, just because we have chosen to live this lifestyle doesn't mean that we are disconnected emotionally
Mhm.
or that we don't get jealous. I can
Right.
definitely tell you that exists in my world. Um, and so you actually spoke about this in the article that I read, and you discuss a, a couple who's basically transitioning
Mhm.
into polyamory, and Kelly's experience with deciding that she wants to do it, but um her challenges and how
Mhm.
confronting she found it to be. So can you speak, yeah, a bit to, I guess, the fact that we do get jealous, trust me,
Mhm.
and also maybe why you would still choose to do it
Mhm.
even though there's such a level of jealousy. I mean, what's been, again, your experience with your research?
Yeah, I think that is a big, like you said, a big myth that's out there. Like, well, these people must just not get jealous, which then the kind of subtext to that is like there's something emotionally wrong or there's something weird, there's
Mhm.
all sorts of implications of that. And it's just not true. Of course, people get jealous. We're human. And,
Yes.
we've grown up in a culture that does, promote this monogamy myth and a certain kind of understanding of love. So in order to make that transition, people have to work through that stuff, and it's an ongoing process. It's not like you do it and then like, yay, I'm done, I have no problems anymore. I mean,
Mhm.
for some people maybe, but for most people it's an ongoing process because of course people get jealous.
Yeah.
um, but I think from what I've learned, what motivates people to stay with it even through that feeling is, developing that awareness that the jealousy is tied to this myth that is not true and not serving a lot of people and that they don't want to participate in anymore.
Mhm.
And so it takes time to kind of rewire those things and to come to a new understanding of it. But the people that I've spoken to, genuinely believe this is worth it. This is something I deeply believe in, that I think is a much more ethical way to live. And that means I'm going to have to deal with some of my shit. So that's what I'm going to do.
So, how did she decide to navigate it, and what worked for her?
Well, yeah, she was interested in dating, but I think it was a little overwhelming for her.
Yeah.
And, something that I think could use more conversation in general is like, people who identify as men and people who identify as women have very different experiences jumping into the dating pool, right? For folks who identify as women, it's often an onslaught. It's overwhelming, right? It can be overwhelming. So, that was part of her hesitation about it. But she was committed to the process and, started a little more slowly than her husband did. But once she started to date, she realized that she could have these other connections and these other relationships, and it didn't take away a single thing in terms of her love and commitment to her husband, that those things could coexist. And so she could better understand like how it could coexist for him as well. And so that really helped her when she started to participate more in that, to really understand how it could work.
There's also this notion of compersion, if you could maybe outline it for people. And I think there's myths about this outside and inside the polyamorous community, of what it is, how necessary it is, how that actually plays out in real life. And I just want to touch on this briefly. So can you explain that to people?
Sure. Yeah. So the idea of compersion is that you take joy and pleasure in your partner experiencing joy and pleasure, right? Which when you're talking about anything other than intimate relationships, we can easily understand, right? Your partner enjoys mountain climbing or whatever, and they get to go on this great trip. And so you're excited for them, and you want them to have a good time, and you are thrilled that they're having this experience that is enriching and fulfilling to them, right? When it comes to intimate relationships, people have a little bit more difficulty understanding how that might work, which is, understandable.
Yeah.
And I think, from what I've learned in the non-monogamous community is that it's not everybody experiences compersion. Some people definitely do, other people never do. And it doesn't mean that they're worse at it or that there's something wrong. It's just people are oriented differently. I mean, sexuality, as you know from your podcast, is very complex, right? It's super complex. So, it's great for those people who can really take the joy and pleasure in seeing their partner have a great date with someone else, or, know that they've gone away for a weekend and had a wonderful experience. That's lovely. It's not true for everybody, and that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, I think inside the community, it's really seen by some people as how it should be. And yeah, like you said, everybody is different. And the amount to which we experience these things, the amount to which we have to push through and deal with our emotions is another thing.
Yeah.
So thank you for explaining that. Another thing that I've heard people say, and what is the difference between polyamory and casual dating?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of differences. And again, people do things differently. It's, non-monogamy is a huge umbrella that captures a lot of things. But polyamory is not usually casual from my experience.
Yes.
That's not really the point of it. If people were just looking for casual dating or casual sex or whatever, which that's totally fine if that's what somebody wants, but that would be something else. That's a different thing than polyamory, which is really centered on relationships and on valuing other people for who they are, and how you can both contribute to each other's lives for the better. So that's really different than casual dating.
Yes. And again, another myth would be that people might be motivated to enter the polyamorous lifestyle motivated by having sex with multiple people. And that's not really been my experience. It's really more about wanting to connect with multiple people.
Something that I've also seen in the non-monogamy community is very clear distinctions about motivations, like really emphasizing clarity, that if somebody says to their partner, I think I want to be polyamorous, and there's this person at work that I think should be our partner, that's not really, that's not really the ethical way that things happen. Or I want to be polyamorous, so I'm going to go and we'll just sleep with whoever we want, which is fine if a couple wants to do that or a group wants to do it, whatever. But it's not polyamory. That's about
No.
relationships.
Yes, and I have done content on different types of relationship structures and different types of non-monogamy. So everyone, I'll link to that in the show notes and maybe drop that as a bonus.
Mhm.
But in that, we make a distinction between polyamorous and open relationships.
Right.
Open relationships, totally valid thing, but that would be two people who have a clear understanding that sexual engagement is permitted to happen outside the relationship. Sometimes people, the one partner will know it's going on, sometimes not, but this is a consensual thing. And I personally have experience with this. I dated someone in an open relationship a number of years ago. And see, even that though, to say that we were dating is maybe not quite accurate, because we would see each other, but yeah, funnily enough, I thought it was casual and knew that he was open, but
Mhm.
then his wife ended up feeling that we were getting too close, which made,
Okay.
I mean, this is a complete sidebar, but I kind of felt bad because I just thought we were like hooking up more or less. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, when that came off on the other side, that she thought we were actually getting too close,
Mhm.
and that he brought that to me, I was actually a little angry because I'm like, I'm not trying to do anything but just see you in the parameters that we've said to see each other. So like, that's on you.
Right.
I sorry, but yes, open relationship, completely valid. But again, it does have to do with a lot of agreements between a couple. We're not necessarily talking about that today, but
Mhm.
that is a relationship structure that a lot of people agree to and yeah, really thrive in. Next question, and I have seen this come up recently, a number of times in your work, and that is that a lot of people equate ethical non-monogamy with certain types of societal privilege. A lot
Mhm.
of people think that it mostly happens in, white, maybe middle upper
Mhm.
class communities. Talk to us about this and maybe let us know even about the scope of your work and the people you um, studied,
Mhm. Mhm.
and also maybe why this is a myth, because I
Mhm.
happen to know that this isn't the case.
Right. I think partially that myth comes from the way that polyamory has been portrayed in the media, for example. That generally, when these scenarios are on a TV show, or, especially in the early days of when it started to become more culturally known.
Same with even Big Love.
Yeah.
I know that they want to have considered that poly, but they were definitely, a rich white family, and the man had
Right.
multiple partners.
Right.
Mhm.
That's interesting. When you said that, it made me think, I wonder if some of that goes back to these perceptions of like men with harems and like
Mm,
the wealth that
yeah,
signaled,
yeah,
you
sure.
know?
Hmm.
So there may be some like cultural associations there that
Hmm.
people are bringing in. But yeah, so part of it is the way it's portrayed in the media. Um, Part of it are the ways that some polyamorous communities operate, not purposefully being exclusionary by any means, quite the opposite. But sometimes they, arise in demographically in places where people tend to be more upper middle class or white or whatever. So, there are reasons why people have that perception. And that is not the full reality, just like what you
Okay.
said. It's a very diverse area,
Mhm.
diverse people. There's absolutely no requirement or anything about polyamory that demands that somebody have a lot of disposable income or be a certain ethnicity. Absolutely not. There are, of course, different, concerns for different communities within the poly community. And I know that there is a very strong Black and poly community, and I'm sure there are others. That's the one I'm familiar with.
There
That,
is. In
Mhm.
fact, a reality show that I really like is called Seeking Sister Wife. You
Yeah.
said that you also hadn't seen that before,
No,
right?
I haven't.
It's multiple seasons long. It's pretty cool, I have to say. And they feature polyamorous families from all different backgrounds,
Interesting.
religious,
Okay.
some upper middle class, yes, for sure. And it's probably split 50-50 between white and
Hmm.
Black couples
Hmm.
or families on the show. And like sincerely, I like it. There's some families in there that are not doing things what I consider ethically at all, but I guess that does happen. But I guess I would tell everyone it's on Amazon Prime, and I would check it out. I had a blast watching it.
It's a very diverse community,
Yep.
and people from all walks of life and all experiences and backgrounds and religions and orientations, all of that. That's part of what's so beautiful, I think, about the poly community is that it really embraces human connection and love without getting, hung up on those kind of gatekeeping things that keep people out.
I do suppose in some ways of doing this, if a man is going to be dating multiple women, you would assume that he's got some amount of cash.
Yeah, true,
um,
true.
so I know that obviously polygamy and polyamory are much different. Though on that show, Seeking Sister Wife, they did have multiple Mormon families who
Mm,
were polygamous rather than polyamorous.
mhm.
But I'm an ex-Mormon. I come from a lineage of polygamy. Maybe that's why
Mhm.
I'm disposed to being. So going back to like the scope of your research. So
Mhm.
what was your sample, sample set, just like everything,
Yeah,
the
so like I
demographics. Mm.
Sure. So as I said, it started in this kind of unexpected way. I wasn't intending to do research on this until I, realized what was happening and learned more about it. I was like, this is
Mhm.
fascinating. People should know about this. There are lessons here for everybody. So I have been working on this anthropologically for gosh, almost 10 years probably.
Okay.
Not full time, not full time, but it's been an interest for that long. And I have interviewed, gosh, close to 100 people probably.
Okay.
Um, some in person, some online, some at conferences, some through referral. Sometimes people find me because I've written an article and they reach out and they say, I'd love to share my experience with you, things like that. So, and the people I've talked to have been really a diverse group of people from, you know, yeah, I don't want to, give any information away, but from, what we might consider to be quote unquote blue collar
Okay.
jobs
Mhm.
to CEOs. Like
Mhm.
it's a huge range. It's a huge range. And
Mhm.
so that's been kind of, and so most of so the research is based on interviews and talking with people, and of course reading all of the literature I can get my hands on, and reading in discussion groups how people are talking about different things that come up, and trying to just access as much information as I can. Yeah.
Who did you interview who had the most partners?
Oh gosh. Probably, yeah. A guy who actually became a good friend of mine, had at any one time, he was married to a woman and had four other
Okay.
partners all at the same
Mhm.
time. And
That's a
she
lot
also
to
had partners
juggle.
and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that was a
Mhm.
lot. And they
Yeah,
were all
I
over the world. So he was traveling a lot to see
gotcha.
them.
So
Yeah,
he was upper class
he
in this
was.
case.
Definitely, definitely, yeah.
I dated someone who I think had, yeah, 4 or 5 others, and it was,
Yeah,
yeah, a lot to juggle, but he was a happy man,
I
trust me.
bet.
Considering that you have such an interest in this, what is your personal background with this lifestyle?
Yeah, so I have had a number of different experiences with non-monogamy,
Okay.
and I am very comfortable talking about that. So after I was divorced, and I was dating, I had some experiences with swinging with one of my partners. So, I've experienced that side of things. And then in the course of meeting folks in the poly community, I've been involved in a number of polyamorous relationships. So that's been my experience over the past 15 years. I am not currently in a polyamorous situation. I am monogamous and married. And I think that is something that I learned for myself through all of those experiences. Not in any way to say that monogamy is better or poly is better. It's not about that at all. It's just what is right for each individual person.
Yeah, so many people dip their toe in and decide it's not for them. I hadn't thought to ask about this, but can you talk about maybe the prevalence of bisexual people in the community? I know particularly I find a lot of bisexual women, and like I said, I hadn't thought to ask about this, but can you speak to that at all?
Yes, it is a very high prevalence. I don't have the numbers in front of me at this moment, but there has been some really good research on
Okay.
sexual orientation and polyamory, and more women than men report bisexuality. Whether or not that is accurately reflecting people's orientation, I don't know, but that's what people share. And so, I think that is certainly a relevant piece for a lot of people. Yeah, people who are, or always been curious about that or had those feelings and knew it, but according to society, you're supposed to do this thing and get married to somebody of a different, sex and gender and go forth. But for a lot of people, there's this piece, like it was for me, like there's this piece of myself that I have not explored and that is important to me, and I need to understand what that is.
Yeah. So going back to my experience in the ex-Mormon community, I actually run a statewide support group for ex-Mormons here in Colorado. It's called Thrive. Come and check us out if you're in a faith transition. And something that has been so common. In fact, I have multiple friends who are couples who have ended up staying together. Doesn't always happen. And this is fascinating to me that there are so many couples who leave the church who will say that they consider both themselves to be bisexual. And
Interesting.
no, it has been like I haven't really come across that outside of the ex-Mormon community very much, where the husband and wife are saying it. And sometimes they stay in both dating in same-sex relationships, but often they don't. And I think that there's just this curiosity, and if you consider yourself to be very curious about having sexual relations with someone from the same sex, that you might automatically want to identify in that way. And also there's something to be said, sexual activity doesn't necessarily equate to sexual identity.
Right.
And that's kind of something to keep in mind. I've had relationships with women, especially on like an experimental level, and I'm not bi. No, I need a certain thing that women aren't able to provide. So to wrap up, you say in your article that polyamory is a quintessential expression of American individualism. I loved that sentence, that claim, when I came across it in your article. So I really wanted to finish on that note.
Yeah, so it's a complicated situation actually, because on the one hand, it is that, and I'll talk about why.
Okay.
On the other hand, a lot of the kind of ethics and philosophy behind polyamory is anti that.
Okay.
So those two things can be true, and those two things are operating at the same time.
Indeed.
So I'll start with the second one about, a lot of folks in the poly community, if they talk about politics or they talk about things like, society, they frequently will talk about, we need bigger ideas of love. We have such narrow understandings of what love and commitment and connection are, and we need to open that up. The way that we have learned about it is all tied to private property ownership and the history of the United States and capitalism and all of that kind of stuff, which 100%. And so a lot of people envision poly as a way of trying to counter some of that, right? Destabilize it, which is absolutely. At the same
I can
time,
see that.
yeah, at the same time, if you think about it a little bit differently, the idea at the core of it is that, we should ideally in our lives feel fulfilled. And it is not reasonable to expect any one person to meet all of our needs. And so it's up to us to build other relationships that will meet different needs for us, right?
Mhm.
And vice versa. It's not just about meeting my needs, but it's a mutual thing, obviously. But this idea of a kind of like designer, bespoke, individualized constellation of relationships that are right for you versus following this cultural script about monogamy really, I think, reflects this idea that we particularly have nowadays with the resources that we have, that we should be able to piece things together to make a life that is meaningful for ourselves. And so I see it as really resonant with that. That's not all it is, so I certainly don't mean to reduce it to that, but I think it is resonant with that kind of idea.
Oh, thank you. And I agree. That was, yeah, a wonderful explanation. Um, Funny that as an academic, you are so articulate.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you for everything you've shared. And thank you for this portion of your research as a scholar. I think it's really valuable. And I think the recent content that you put out what was really useful. Um, why do you think that this has become such an interest, like really in the past 2 years? I mean, I, for instance, have my Google alerts
Mhm.
set to polyamory, and wow, I mean, there is such a sudden interest. I got into the
Mhm.
lifestyle 10 years ago officially, and also, having been from a polygamous family, I mean, like, I can assure you there's nothing new about this, but
Mhm.
all of a sudden, I mean, you're just seeing it absolutely everywhere. So
Mhm.
what has happened?
Here's my theory about that. It is
Okay.
just a theory, but this is how I, have thought about it. Is my hunch is that folks who were growing up in the say early 2000s or around there, cognizant enough to be aware of all the things that happened in our society in 2008 with the economic crash, and not just that, but like what that did to our society. Things became very unstable. They were already becoming unstable. But from folks I've talked to, a lot of people bring this up in the sense of that shook my confidence, that relying on what society tells me is going to be my path to stability and happiness, I don't trust that anymore, whether it's economically or any other way. And I think that's one reason. There's many, but people really started to question these cultural narratives. Like, does this really bring happiness? Like
Hmm.
my parents' generation, where monogamy was like the thing, but then you have these skyrocketing divorce rates, right?
Yeah, I was just gonna say the conversation back then was 50% of marriages end in divorce. I mean, that was like some sort of social crisis when I was growing up.
Absolutely. And then you
Mhm.
you think, well, why do people keep doing it if that's that's what's going on? But I think, yeah, so I think a whole new generation of folks have come along, and not that poly hasn't been around forever, because it has, but in terms of its visibility now, I think it's a newer generation that really is questioning these narratives, and not just that, but coming up with ways of doing things differently and saying we don't have to buy into that, and there's all these other configurations of how you can build your life in a way that is ethical and meaningful, and has all that human connection but doesn't look like the script. And so I think it may have something to do with that. And with that kind of critical mass of folks, more people are putting it out there on the media or doing podcasts about it, or and people are curious and learning about it. So I don't know, that's just kind of my working theory about why it's become so visible.
Well, and I hope if anyone's curious about it that you, yeah, decide to dip your toe in just a little bit. The apps are a great way to do
Mhm.
that. It's definitely not for everyone, but give it a shot. To wrap up, do you have a favorite maybe form of media, or a favorite show or movie, or something that you might recommend to people who are curious about
Ah,
polyamory?
yes, actually, the whole show is not about polyamory, but there are often polyamorous folks on it, which is couples therapy. I don't know if you are familiar with this show.
I am, but I never really got into it.
Oh my gosh. The season 5 just came out and my husband and I binged it this weekend. It's just phenomenal. I love it. That season does not have poly folks on it, but there are other seasons that do. And so the format of the show is this psychologist. It's a reality show is not the right term, but it's a true show. Is a therapist that works with a collection of couples throughout the entire season. And so you really get in there, you see all the therapy sessions and how she's working with them and what kind of issues are coming up. And I think, the ones that I've seen of how she's worked with folks who are in poly situations, I think gives a really good and deep insight into some of the challenges, some of the pitfalls, but also the resources and the strengths. And I just think it's great. So I would
Okay.
recommend seeking
So
out seasons of that.
couples therapy,
Yeah.
everyone. Oh, Rebecca, what a great chat. And again, thank you for all of the work that you are doing. Thank you to everyone who watched this on YouTube. Thank you to everyone who's listening to it elsewhere. If you would like to support my work, please go and join my Patreon. I have tiers starting at just $1 a month. It means the absolute world to me when people join. I'm an indie podcaster, and don't actually get paid for this. So,
Well, yeah. And on that note, thank you for all the work that you do.
thank you. I'm very passionate about it. I love doing Sex and the Solo Girl. It's so much fun, and I get to meet such cool people like you. Well, Rebecca Lester, remind us one more time the name of your book that you're so passionate about.
Famished, Eating Disorders, and Failed Care in America.
All right, everyone go check it out. And I will see you next week. Bye, everyone.